Order the Brookline School Board for Wednesday, March 23rd, 2022. This is our annual reorganization meeting of the board. Before I do that, I'd like to welcome Colleen and Kelly to the board, and thank you very much for your service to the town. And I'd also like to take a moment and just thank our voters for their support on Election Day. All the articles for the Brookline District passed, and we're very pleased with that. And we'll be working over the next month to provide updates on those different articles and how they'll be put forth with regard to the facilities. At the reorganization meeting, the superintendent is the chair until a chairperson is elected. Per previous conversations with our attorney, the following process will be utilized for the nomination and election of a chairperson. In a few moments, I will open the floor for a nomination of a chairperson. I'll accept a nomination and ask for a second for each individual put forth. I'll call for a discussion for each candidate, and then I'll call for a vote. If that vote passes, that individual becomes the chair, and I pass the chairmanship over to that board member. Then we repeat the process for a vice chair and a secretary, and then we'll begin our meeting. And tonight, just for folks at home that might be watching, we will begin, after we do this process, by a non-public, because tonight is teacher nominations and a discussion of a legal matter. So we will be moving to that shortly. Are there any questions before I call for a nomination? Seeing none, does anybody wish to nominate someone for the position of chair for the Brookline School Board?
Nominate Ken if he's willing, but
I'll second that.
but you have done a lot of work, so.
I figured that was probably coming. Happy to do it.
Thank you.
I noticed you averted your eyes, so.
I have a nomination by Karen and a second by Colleen. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of Ken being chair, please signify by raising your hand. So that passes 4-0, and I'll pass it over to you, Ken, for the vice chair and the secretary.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. All right, so now we are going to have a vice chair. So this is going to be a good opportunity for a new vice chair this year with our previous vice no longer here. So are there any nominations at all or anyone that's interested in doing this? Alice not here, so
I
we're
know.
down to 3 people.
Right here? No.
I don't know that I would do that one.
Yeah.
Maybe a different role.
All the committees.
Yeah. You have the experience, obviously. You two are new, but does anyone have an interest in doing that? Really, it's probably for maybe negotiations or if I'm not around and can be on the show.
I will do it if. Okay,
I will nominate Karen Jew then.
I'll second that nomination.
Okay, let's do a vote. Oh, is there any discussion? Do a vote. All in favor? 4-0. Very good, thank you. And then we need a secretary. Very glamorous role. Particularly with the non-public, will help with non-public. That's probably where most of the activity will be. Karen's done that in the past. I've done it in the past. It's, well, I think it might feel a little stressful when you don't know what to do, but we'll help explain what needs to be done. Otherwise, Dawn
templates.
has a lot of
Yeah.
detail all laid out for us.
Yeah.
So are either of you interested in doing that?
I think either one of
Either
us
one of us
is
is fine,
like.
yeah.
Does anyone-
I can do it if you want,
Okay.
yeah.
All right,
That's
well, I'll
fine.
nominate
Second.
Colleen then.
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor? 4-0, very good, thank you. Now we're down to committees. So first is manifests. 2 people typically do that. The nice thing about the manifest now is that it's an email and it comes out every other week, where it's just an approval, a review of the vouchers, of everything on the checks, and then an approval. So we'll need 2 people to do that. I'm happy to be the alternate.
I'll
If I can
vote.
just nominate myself for an alternate as opposed to primary.
Sure.
All right.
I'll nominate myself.
Okay, Kelly, and then, anyone else want to do that?
I can do- you don't want
Just
It's
have to
up
be
you.
by your email and say approve.
If you want, I can.
All right, Colleen, maybe it would be good that you can see some of the expenses throughout the year too.
Yeah.
You kind of learn about some of the stuff as we talk before the budget, so.
Sure.
Okay,
Yep.
great. So, Colleen and Kelly will take that and I will be the alternate. I need to sign this form now with their names? Okay. Okay, great. And then we have a couple of committees. So we have the Brookline School District Policy Committee, the Brookline Finance Committee, the Teacher Luncheon, the SAU Governing Board Policy Committee, which I would recommend stay with the policy person, the SAU Governing Board Budget Committee, the School and Town Services Committee. I've been sitting on that one, so I'll just, well, Colleen, you were there, but I'll
No, you
probably
can
keep
keep
going that one. Facility Study Committee or Construction Renovations Project Working Committee, and then a negotiating team. So those are all the things out there this year for the different time commitments. We might offer Allison up on some of these as we talk here, as we move forward. So is a negotiating team for a teacher contract this year? Okay.
The other thing that we have done in some of the other districts, if you prefer, put board members offline.
Yeah.
And then do the appointments next month.
Okay.
Because it's trying to balance everybody's schedules and times. And with Allison running late tonight, it might be
It's a good
an
thought.
easier approach.
Yeah, okay. I think that's a good idea. So we'll everyone think about their time commitments. Negotiating team will probably take a little more time, especially as we get closer to finalizing that contract. The policy is probably once a month. Hey, Allison, it's probably a once-a-month meeting as well. And then the others are kind of a little more ad hoc, I would say. Would you agree with that, Karen?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we will come back to that next month with names for all of these. I'll send out a reminder too on email so we can make sure we're all covered there. Okay, so with that, we have a non-public session next. So I'm going to make a motion that the board by roll call go into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91A32, the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, and RSA 91A32C to discuss a matter which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of a person other than a member of the body or agency itself. So I'll need a second for that.
Second.
I'm sorry, there's one more. And our RSA 91A32L, consideration of legal advice provided by legal counsel, either in writing or orally, to one or more members of the public body, even where legal counsel is not present. So I need a second for all this.
Second.
Thank you. So that's with Karen. Kelly, we'll start with you for roll call, and we're just going to go around the room. So just say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Karen, I.
Allison, I.
And Ken, I. So we are non-public. That passes 5-0 at 6:08. Thank you. 6:36, we are back in our public meeting. Are there any agenda adjustments that we need to make?
The only recommendation I would make is John McMillan, our recording secretary, would like us to postpone policy DFA on investments till next month. She's doing a little research on that, and she wanted to go back in some of the minutes for clarification. So if we could just postpone that, and we'll bring it back next month. And just so you know, the Code of Ethics and investments are two mandatory motions that we do every year. We don't have any investments right now, so there's nothing pressing for that motion, but we always make it for the future.
Great, thanks. Okay, just making a note there. Okay. All right, so we are on to approval of minutes then. Colleen and Kelly, you will need to abstain for all of these. Okay, so the first one is our joint meeting between the Brookline School Board and the Finance Committee on December 15th of 2021. The following amendment was offered, page 10, line 40, delete or. So I will make the motion to accept as amended.
Second.
Second, all in favor? 3, all abstain? This is where you have to, yeah, thank you. 2, great. All right. Next one is the Brookline School Board meeting on December 22nd of 2021. The following amendment was offered, page 5, line 3, replace the period with a comma. So I'll make a motion to accept as amended.
Second.
Second, all in favor? 3, abstain? 2, thank you. All right, our next meeting is the joint Brookline School Board Finance Committee on January 12th. The following amendments were offered. Page 4, line 24, correct the spelling of co-op. Page 11, line 15, insert stated following Vice Chairman Saris. I will make the motion to accept as amended.
Second.
Second, all those in favor? 3, abstain? 2, thank you. All right, next one is the Brookline School Board first public hearing on January 12th. The following amendment was offered. Page 2, line 7, replace FY22 with FY23. I'll make the motion to accept as amended.
Second.
Second by Karen again. All in favor? 3, abstain? 2, thank you. The next meeting is the Brookline School Board second public hearing on January 12th, 2022. The following amendment was offered. Page 5, line 5, replace stated with stating. I will make the motion to accept as amended.
Second.
Seconded by Karen. All in favor? 3, abstain? 2, very good. Brookline School Board, February 7th. The following amendments were offered. Page 1, amend the title to reflect a joint meeting with the Finance Committee and show members of the Finance Committee as being in attendance. And page 4, line 22, insert given at the start of the sentence. I will make the motion to accept as amended.
Second.
Second by Karen, all in favor? 3, abstain? 2, thank you. Brookline School Board public hearing on February 7th. The following amendment was offered. Page 1, identify all members of Finance Committee as being in attendance. Make the motion to accept as amended.
Second.
Second, all in favor? 3, abstain? 2, we're getting there. Brookline School Board deliberative session on February 7th. The following amendment was offered. Page 12, line 3, replace the comma with a period. Page 14, line 45, delete the backslash at the end of the page. I will make the motion to accept as amended.
Second.
Second, all in favor? 3, abstain? 2, very good.
This is why I nominated you as chair, because you have to do all the reading.
All right, we made it through that, so very good. So now we are moving to public input. We have I'm going to do this at every meeting. BDH reads, The board will provide a maximum of 15 minutes to hear public comments from residents at the beginning of each regular board meeting. This period may be extended by a majority vote of the board. Additionally, the board may include additional public comment period for specific agenda items if pertinent. Individual speakers will be allotted 3 minutes per person. Speakers may not relinquish allotted time to another speaker. For specific meetings and/or specific agenda items, the board may, at the outset of the public comment period, increase the individual time limit for all speakers. So with that, we have public input if there is any. We do not. Very good. So with that, we will move on to discussion then. The first one is our principal's report.
Good evening. For our March 23rd Principals Report, our enrollment has stayed relatively the same as it did the last time we reported out, with a few move-ins and a few move-outs, but I believe the last time we presented, the enrollment was still at 587 students in Brookline. In just a moment, I'm going to share a presentation about our morning news, which is on the Principals Report. There's a little image there, and I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Boulay for our upcoming events and some events going on in her building.
Assemblies, and it was one that each of the grade levels got to have an in-person assembly. We did it by grade level, and the students were wonderful. And I think it was wonderful for them to see a presentation. Matt Wilhelm is a national BMX bike rider, so he does all these incredible tricks, and so you'll see some of the pictures here. And he did a glow in the dark. So it was virtual, but he made the video especially for us. And I think that, will really help to, again, create a wonderful environment here. It was also a week that we had a CSDA Acts of Kindness Week, and we had different activities every single day in which the students and the staff could participate. Again, reminding everyone what it means to be a member of our community, the importance of being kind, watching our words, how our words are meaningful to one another. And when you leave this evening, please note there's a paper chain that's on the wall above our wall of our wolf wall, we call it. And it was chains of kindness that students received or gave each other. Mm-hmm. And the classrooms put them together, and we displayed them to remind us that we are a community. And then we have several upcoming events. Obviously, today was an early release, and that was successful at both of the schools. And report cards for trimester 2 will be coming out April 1st at the end of that day. Our statewide SAS testing will begin the week of May 3rd, so we'll be providing schedules out to families on exactly when the testing will take place for grades 3 through 6. Just a reminder that grade K, you'll have a orientation on May 6th, and book fairs at RMMS on May 9th. And May 19th, Plymouth State, the Tiger program will be coming, and this year it's going to be Kindness Speaks. So that'll be down at RMMS, so the students will be looking forward to that activity. And the CSDA book fair will be May 23rd. We'll have another early release on the 27th. We also have Brookline staffing needs. We're still in need of some paraeducators, custodians, and for both RMS and CSDA.
Okay, thanks, Trish. And also on the principal's report, there's an image of Sir Sterling from the Nashua Knights, and our Brookline PTO has partnered with them along with our school. Our students, we've been presenting in the newsletter that all of our Brookline students have the opportunity to earn a ticket to the Nashua Knights game. And if they read 10 books each month, they get a ticket. And also, the PTO has worked with the Nashua Knights as well to plan an evening out in June. So I want to thank the Nashua Knights are partnering with both our PTO and our school to offer this opportunity. We did do it last year as well, and it was very successful, and the students enjoyed that. So next I want to share our morning news, and I'm excited to share this with you. It gives you kind of a sneak peek into what our mornings are like at RMS. I want to thank ahead of time our grade 3 students and some of our staff who work hard to put this together each day. As you know, prior to the pandemic, we used to have our 3rd grade students come to the office and they would work with me and do morning announcements. Then the pandemic came and that morning announcement took a turn. We did it remotely. And then last year, just with social distancing, we just did it out of the office. But this video I think you'll really enjoy because it shows how our school comes together, and all the classes have really partaken in this. Every class in the building gets a chance to participate in some way, but it's really owned by the 3rd grade students. And I want to thank them and the 3rd grade team and the staff who are putting this together. So let me get this started and sit back and relax for a quick 6-minute video. Yes. Hey, Matt. Excuse me. Matt. Am I having the sound? Or just do a quick sound check? Turn off, turn on. Did it come from me? All right, because we need the audio. We need this audio.
You do that every day?
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna ask too. Was that like a snippet of a whole morning?
Yes, so that's just a
That's
sneak
just
peek
one
into what
day?
we do each morning at RMS, and the kids love it. It's just a
Wow.
way to kickstart our day.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah. In all the classes, you'll see them dancing along with the
Oh,
different.
that song, I know that song.
Yeah.
I'm surprised how well I know that song.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I know that the viewers at home are having a little difficulty hearing, so I think they were working on that right now, but I'll do my best to kind of speak loud enough through here. Okay. So Gina, Trish, and I will be presenting to you our Brookline School District assessment data. And this will encompass our New Hampshire SAS results from last year, which we will be soon testing students in grades 3 through 6 in Brookline once May hits. This will also share about our Ames Web testing that we do to benchmark students in Progress Monitor. And we'll also talk a little bit about our MTSS support system, and that stands for Multi-Tiered System of Supports, and that covers the social, the emotional, the academic piece, and the behavioral piece. For our first slide, we listed just the dates of our professional development and collaboration times that we've had with our teachers to cover this goal that we'll talk about in a second. At the end of the year in June, we identified all of our teachers in all grades in Brookline, identified students that we had some concerns for that may have resulted in some learning loss and some learning gaps. And then we identified those students, and last summer we were fortunate enough to offer a summer learning academy, which we had quite a few participants in, and that was well received by families that were able to participate to help remediate some of those learning gaps that we saw during the remote learning times. In August, end of August and early September, we met with our teachers, and we had an MTSS presentation to further share with our staff what that looks like in our Brookline schools. We also reviewed the learning loss sheets with the students' teachers that they're going to, and also the previous year's teachers. For our November dates, we worked on curriculum work and alignment to update our curriculum maps that we have in our district for ELA. That was mostly the focus, was ELA, and also our Unified Arts Specialist curriculum maps. And then in December, both RMS and CSDA, we had some committee work that we broke up into. We worked on some health and safety committees. We also at RMS looked at what it means to, what does it look like as a Blue Jay student. We looked at our curriculum maps further, and also how we can further partner with the community, and how we can recognize students in our school in different respects. And then just today, we had a wonderful presentation. I call it the Ellen Show. Ellen Banning is our BCBA, who was hired in, I think, October, November-ish. And she did a presentation today about the functions of behavior, what an antecedent behavior is, behavior consequences, reinforcements, punishments. And we had a good workshop today after school for the half-day early release. So in the fall, we did a presentation as a district team to the school board or to the governing board of our goals as a district. And Mrs. Boulay and I chose this slide because this focuses on our scores and our assessments. So the habits of learning was the goal we presented in the fall. And in that goal, we shared that we're going to have an MTSS focus for the multi-tiered system of supports. And some of the action steps we were going to do is have an opening week. We're going to talk about what MTSS supports look like in the building. We're also going to look at the supports we have through our flow charts, our data days, and our assessments, and how we monitor. So that's been our goal for the year. We also continue to use components of Choose Love to cover that social emotional piece as well. And as we go through these slides, both Mrs. Boulay and I, looking through the data, we are very proud of our students and our teachers for just the growth and gains our students have made. And also we appreciate the support that the students are receiving at home as well, those families that know that their childs are getting interventions, because they're also helping on the home end as well. And it further strengthens that partnership. Additionally, this year has been challenging, and I think you can see in our Brookline Principals Report as well, we've got quite a few openings, and you'll see that we still have not filled those MTSS positions. our primary focus is making sure we have our paraeducators first, because that's a legal requirement, make sure that we have those special education paraprofessionals. And then we want to focus on those MTSS interventionists. So with that, because of some of the absences and shortage of staff, sometimes we don't have the consistent interventions. But even with that, we've made some strong gains, and I think you'll see that through the presentation. Mrs. Boulay.
Yep. Okay, so the big question is, how does data inform our decisions? Well, our goal, as we stated here, is our goal as educators is to be knowledgeable and compassionate with every student within our care. We perform benchmark assessments using the AIMSweb Plus program two to three times a year. Basically, in the fall and late spring, usually in the May, June timeframe, we'll be doing the AIMSweb building-wide for grades 3 through 6. And in the wintertime, we did some assessments for students who are receiving the Tier 2 interventions. We have our RTI teams. RTI stands for Response to Intervention, and that's a component of the MTSS program, in which we examine the data and group students based on need in those interventions. Basically, the big thing is to have conversations with the team, which also includes meeting with the guidance counselor or any therapist, administration, our reading and math specialists as well. Having conversations focused on both the social, emotional, and academic. The groups are flexible, meaning that students can enter or leave a program as needed, and their progress monitored. Grade level teams meet weekly in each of the buildings for their PLCs, which is professional learning communities. And again, that way the entire team is looking at all students across a grade level. And we also have a PLC flow chart in which we shared with our staff, and we try to stick with that flow chart as far as the process so that we can have a standardized program. The big thing is that, I have to say that our MMS has had their MTSS program more consistent. And so when I've come on board, this is one of our key goals that we can make sure that we're broadening that consistency throughout the district. And we also do progress monitoring of the students.
PLC stand for?
Professional learning community.
Okay.
So that's when the grade level teams will get together 1 day a week, each week, and they'll discuss different components. It could be academic, social, emotional, and also looking at the data of any tests or particular exams that they may have given as a grade level.
Thank you.
Right, so as was mentioned earlier, every spring we do New Hampshire SAS testing, and in this district, that's grades 3 through 6. We do English language arts and math, and then 5th grade also does science. So from my perspective, I take a look at the kind of the 20,000 foot view, of where our students are, and then try to make some decisions district-wide for that. So when the pandemic hit, we immediately mobilized and made teams for moving to remote before we really knew what remote was. So we had regular contact with our students and families. And then last year, we provided 5 days of in-person instruction, while many districts were offering either hybrid or, something very different. And I think that that jump right in attitude of all of our teachers and staff and our administrators really demonstrated how it has a positive impact on our students. You hear nationwide these incredible learning gaps that were created, and while we see an impact, we are certainly not seeing what other districts are seeing, and that's 100% due to the commitment of our families and of our staff to make sure that we had continuity of education. But taking a look at our 2021 statewide assessment results, a couple things to note. This was an in-person assessment, and we did have last spring, probably still around 16% or so of our students who were remote, and so some of those chose not to take the statewide assessment, so they opted out. Another piece to note is we did not We did not administer the spring 2020 assessment because of, of the shutdown. So really, for two grade levels, we had students that had never seen this before, so that was brand new to them. But taking a look at our English language art results, you can see that so this is last year's grade 6, grade 5, grade 4, and grade 3, but Brookline is in blue, and the state of New Hampshire is in red, and so we have a really strong performance in ELA, and we're proud of that. Looking at our math results, once again, a very strong performance from our Brookline students. And you can see that there was tremendous dip in the red, and that, that statewide some gaps were created, and yet we were able to maintain a strong performance. So very proud of the work of our students there. And then taking a look at science, as I mentioned, it's grade 5 that completes the science, and once again, consistency demonstrated by our students. So very proud of that. But what I do is I don't just look at one year, one assessment. A couple different ways I take a look at this data is I look at English language arts over time to see if we're seeing a trend. So I will focus just on the far right at looking at grade 6. So you see I'm looking at grade 6 2021, so those are our current 7th graders. I don't have information on our current 8th graders because that's the year that we didn't assess. But then I have our current 9th graders and our current 10th graders. And if you look at the blue bars or Brookline bars, we were consistent. In fact, the grade 6 team sees an increase despite COVID. Our grade 5 team sees a very consistent, a little dip and a little bump up for last year. Grade 4 saw a change over time, and if you look between 2019 to 2021, that's really where you're looking at potential impact of learning loss or the pandemic. And then our grade 3, also a slight change over time. We're going to move on to math. Once again, we see that we have a strong performance over time, fairly consistent when many other districts saw sort of scores plummeting. And I want to bring your attention to grade 3 2021, to our current 4th graders. Those results demonstrated that there was a stronger need in that cohort, and we wanted to utilize some of our resources. One thing that we heard with public input and input from family survey was there was concern about learning loss. And so with our ESSER funds, we took a look at this data for grade 3 for both math and ELA and felt that this group, although the size did not dictate an additional section by policy, the results both for math, ELA, and some behaviors that we were noticing, that warranted another section so that we could have smaller class sizes and better address the individual needs of the students. And so this grade 4 class right now, there are 5 sections instead of the 4 that we have in our other grades. Another piece that we look at is not just grade 6 over time, because you're looking at different cohorts, but we look at cohorts like how does class of 2027, and so that would be our current 7th graders, am I correct? Current 7th graders. How have they done over time? And if you take a look, we to the far right, I'll start over there, we have their scores last year when they were in 6th grade. We don't have 5th grade, but we have 4th grade and 3rd grade. And you can see that that cohort is pretty steady with their ELA performance over time, and looking at the math, also fairly steady. A little bit of a dip in grade 6 last year, but fairly steady. And so that cohort is a strong cohort and maintained and did not see the same sort of loss. All right, so, and then looking at our class of 2028 data, so this is our current 6th graders. We have grade 5 data on them. We don't have grade 4, and the first time the state offers this assessment is in grade 3. So we're really only looking at 2 data points for this, but we can see that ELA saw an uptick, math saw a little downshift, yet grade 5 performance is much higher than where the state is in that particular grade level. So strong performance with that particular cohort, and we feel good about that. Moving on, we also want to see, well, how are we doing compared to everyone else in the state? So these are some of the districts that we use for a variety of reasons, sometimes because they're close to us, sometimes because they have a similar makeup, sometimes we just have similar performance. So there's a variety of reasons why we selected these. And if you can see that overall, we are right in the pack with all of our comparable districts. at the top of the pack, really. And it's that grade 3 ELA that's a little bit lower than our traditional, pack, if you will, moving to grades 4, 5, and 6. And move, next slide. And the same thing with the math. We see we're right in the pack with our quote-unquote competitors who we compare ourselves to, feeling fairly strong about that. And then once again, we just took a different approach of reducing the class size for that cohort in grade 3 that moved into grade 4. So just to kind of sum up what I do is I take that big picture data and then also talk with the principals and say, what are you seeing? Because it's a snapshot on 1 week in April or May on how they're doing. But then what the principals bring me is both classroom data and local data that they're really digging into all the individual standards and such.
So moving on, this slide shows our Ames Web data that we talked about earlier. Our kindergarten through grade 6 does Ames Web testing. And with our kindergarten, this is our first time we've had our hands on them. The only information we have about our kindergartners coming in is from the kindergarten screening that we do in May from the previous year, and also the developmental history forms that families share with us. And for our kindergarten, we look at this, and this is one data point. We have other data points we look at. We look at running records. We do sometimes math running records. We also have observations. We have assessments in class. But this is one data point that we have consistent throughout the building that we use. And you'll see in the red, we're focusing on that high group in red. Those are the students that we are then looking back at what Mr. Boulay shared with our day-to-days and our learning profiles. Those are the groups that we're targeting. So in the fall, in September, October, when we tested the kindergartners, the 79 that we tested, we had 24 that were in the high, the red there. Now, just recently, we just received our winter scores. Those 24 students, we have now 11 in the red, 8 in the yellow, and 5. So our interventions that we put into place have been working really well, and we're excited to see that the red group become reduced.
Are those risk scores, those colors, is that there? High risk, high mean
High risk.
risk?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, moderate risk and low risk. And then looking at math, we went from the 9 that were in the high risk, that's now down to 0. And we are at 5 and 4, so 5 in the moderate and 4 in the green. And looking at first grade, you'll see that we have quite a few students that were in the high. And last year, this is not a surprise to us. We had a high group of our kindergartners that were receiving interventions, roughly about 26 of them. But since then, we did receive some students that were new to the district that came to first grade. Also, we had several students that were that didn't come to kindergarten, but were homeschooled or such. So that's our beginning mark with the first graders. But since then, some tremendous growth. We now have 11 students that are in the red, and so that's huge. So and then the rest of them have dispersed to the moderate and the low. And then looking at math in that area, we went from 22, it's down to 3, and then the rest have dispersed as well. So some great gains, and I want to thank our reading teachers and specialists and our math specialists for those interventions, and also the classroom teachers, because all of this work is happening during the win time, what I need time, to target those skills. And then going out to grade 2, you'll see that our numbers start to dip a little bit, because now we've had the students for several years and we've provided intervention. So our goal is to really have, that high category shouldn't be high. It should be in the lower areas, because we've had, those students have had intervention. So we went from there from 17 in the ELA area down to 2, and the rest have been dispersed. And with the math 14, it was down to 3. And then moving on to third grade, we had 3 down to 1 for ELA, and the 7 was down to 2. So some really great gains. And then the next slide I'm excited to share. When looking at all the students that we service, there's roughly about 67 students that are in our intervention group. So that we saw 88% of our students making some type of percentile growth. 23% of our students increased 1 level, and 14% increased 2 levels in ELA. And then for math, 81% of our students had growth, and 51% increased 1 level, and 11% of our students increased 2. So some really nice gains. The other thing I want to mention was these are also weighted tests, so that test changes as the year goes on. It adjusts the difficulty of that test, so. Over to Mrs. Boulay.
Thank you. And we have similar charts here for 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. So you can see on the reading, sorry, see we had 68 students at the low risk, 8 at the moderate, and 3 at the high for reading. For math, the moderate was 7, and we had 8 in the high risk. So again, these are the students that would be focusing on, we would be focusing on for the Tier 2 intervention. For 5th grade, we have 7 in the moderate for reading, 4 at high risk, and again, math was similar, 7 in the moderate and 3 in the high. But the big thing is look at the low risk, overwhelming a high number of students. And 6th grade, for the reading, for the moderate, we had 3 students and 2 for high risk, and for math, 6 and 4. And overall, what we were seeing for those numbers were all for the fall, which was, the whole building being, the whole, all grade level students being tested. And then for the winter, we really focused on the group that is receiving the reading intervention, and we also provided the math testing. So the percentile growth for ELA, percentile growth, was 69%. Math percentile growth was 63%. And then again, we broke it down the same way as RMMS as far as those students that were able to increase by 1 level or 2 level increases. So we're really proud. And again, I think what will be really more interesting is when we see the comparison from our fall to June growth across the building. And I think by then, we've, like Mr. Molinari was saying, we had difficulty in the sense that we had a lot of illness. We had, of course, the shutdown here for a day in November. So it really made it more difficult as far as really providing those services on a consistent basis. But I think we're on an uptick now as far as really meeting the needs of these students. And I really want to give a shout out to all the teachers and our specialists that work so hard. Questions?
I have one question. The competition chart, as you called it, not competition, but the district. Yes. I know we do our internal collaborations, and obviously Hollis is easy to collaborate with because they're in the SAU. Do we reach out to, like, I'm looking at the ELA, and Bedford seems to score fairly well. Do we share what people are doing within the state for opportunities for improvement?
Absolutely. So I have a monthly meeting with all curriculum instruction assessment folks in the South Central region.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a former SAU 41 employee that does data and curriculum in Bedford. So we take a look at that data closely between Bedford, Hollis, and Brookline, and take a look at, okay, what programs are you doing? Is there an intervention that you've implemented? And sometimes it's just, how did this particular cohort score so high? And other times it's absolutely the result of the implementation of a program, which we saw here in Brookline when we did Envision 2.0.
Yep.
Our math scores
Right.
jumped, and then Hollis implemented 2.0 a couple years ago, and they're seeing a dramatic jump in their math scores more recently. So we absolutely collaborate to try to
Great.
get to that same common goal.
I was going to kind of talk to you about that 2.0 math jump, because when we look at it now, and taking COVID into account, we're kind of seeing almost a leveling off.
Sure.
And how much of that is attributable to COVID, and how much of that is attributable to maybe the program not being as efficacious as it once was?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if we'll ever target the exact answer to that. However, next year, we're going to begin the curriculum review process. We did 2.0 contracts with Hollis and Brookline so that we would end at the same time. So next year, we'll have everyone take a look at all the materials and either reaffirm that this is where we want to be or make a shift. Sometimes it's that new program and that really taking a look at focusing on what it is and why we're doing it, and then like you said, there's a leveling off over time. So sometimes it just takes a curriculum review to really come together as a team and say, these are the lessons that are really hit home with the students and drive those curriculum pieces home, with clarity. And, these are the manipulatives that really help that hands-on learner, et cetera, and just engaging in those conversations. So I'm excited for that work next year.
And then like a non-sort of curriculum question that kind of went back to the beginning was, and correct me if I'm wrong because I've had a lot of information going through my head these days, but I want to say that I saw something, and it may not have been this district, because I deal with a lot of different districts these days, about some behavioral kind of discrepancies and issues going on that we haven't seen in the past that really can be attributed to COVID issues and kids going back to the classrooms and having been at home. And we're looking, I saw you said that the ABA, professional development, was done. I'm sorry?
Oh, you said BCBA.
Oh, the BCBA. Professional development was done. Has that been a significant issue here? And is that contributing to some of our numbers and some impact on the classrooms and how much kids are learning? Or is that not such a big issue here?
So it's an issue, I would say, nationwide. I mean, I hear the same issue with my curriculum group, principals hear it with their principal groups, superintendent hears it with the superintendent's group. I think we've seen an uptick in certain behaviors, a lot more bullying investigations, just inappropriate behaviors. In other districts, it's there's a lot more kind of physical aggression that they're seeing and dealing with. But if you think about it, our ninth graders, the last time they had a typical school year was sixth grade. That impacts their ability to socialize, to interact appropriately. Some folks who were remote the entire time are trying now to understand about their own physical space. And so we're teaching a lot, and it's not just academics. It's about how, your own personal space, your body space, how to collaborate with another peer. And, it's just part of what we do, and we're doing a little bit more of it this year.
I think that's just it's kind of like serves as a reminder to everybody that it's not just math and science and reading that's going on. There's a lot of bigger social that's going on that doesn't typically or has not traditionally taken place because of the level of isolation that has gone on in the last few years, and the level of children being remote and children being home and people working from home.
Well, and after school activities, whether they were school related or not as many children were participating in that, and that's just another aspect of learning.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a number of factors that contribute, and so it's just our job to take a look at it and work through those and teach those.
Thank you. Appreciate that overview. Okay, we are on next to the Brookline School District calendar for 2022-2023. Yeah, I was just seeing if I had anything else to say, and I don't.
All right, so before you have a draft calendar. It's very similar to the calendar that we always see. With our professional staff returning the Monday prior to Labor Day. Based on the VESA contract that was approved, we now have our paraeducators returning on the Tuesday prior to Labor Day. And we have students beginning on September 1st, that Thursday prior to Labor Day. We have Columbus Day in October. November, we have an election day on November 8th, and that's traditionally when we have a professional development day. So we have scheduled a professional day on the November 8th. with Veterans Day on the 11th as a holiday. Excuse me, what is new is on November 22nd, there's an E. And so we are proposing an early release. We would like to maintain those 4 early releases that we have this year, but we'd like to put it on the calendar so there's, it's very start of the school year when those would be. So that would be on that Tuesday. Looking at December, we just have 1 week, and that's shorter than many weeks, or many years, excuse me, for December break. So my proposal is to put our second professional development day on December 23rd, which would be the last Friday before school vacation. So that seemed to work well for families, giving them a little bit of extra time to travel this year, and also for our educators to get some work done, prep them for January to come back ready to go. All right, moving on, we have
The parentheses days in February. Tuesdays,
parentheses.
7th, 14th, and 21st are in parentheses on my calendar.
I don't-
Apparently, only mine are in parentheses.
So looking at February, the February break is a little bit of a better split that's actually present partially in February this year, which is great. There an E scheduled for March 29th and an E scheduled for May 25th. And I missed an E somewhere, but an E scheduled for January 30th. There it was. I apologize. That puts us at June 8th for the last day of preschool, June 19th, the last day of school. If we had 5 snow days, it would be the 12th if we had 0. And if the 19th is our last student day, then June 20th would be our last day for teachers. This calendar includes students being present on the March 7th voting day, as they were this year. I think we managed that fairly well. Traffic wasn't great at dismissal, but maybe we some reminders about our dismissal time so folks can avoid it if possible. Like I said, very traditional school calendar, so it is for your viewing. And you are the first board to see it.
I guess my feedback, today, the random Wednesday was tough from an early release day. Is there a way to move that to a Friday if we're gonna hold those as opposed to a Wednesday?
So we picked a Monday, Tuesday, and a Wednesday, and a Thursday, and we avoided a Friday because of the co-op. Fridays are late start PLC days, and so this year when we had an early release on a Friday, we had to cancel that late start, and that became very chaotic for all of our 7th through 12th graders. So the overwhelming feedback was, don't ever put it on a Friday again. But I can respect an early Friday sets off the weekend rather than on a Wednesday.
Those early release days always professional development for the teachers?
Yeah, so professional development, in May, we are completing our state mandated suicide prevention training for our staff. So as more trainings are made required for good reason, but we're running out of time to do it. And so these 2-hour early release allows us that time to complete state mandated trainings, but also gives our teachers that time to collaborate and plan, dig into the data, and respond with shifts in instruction when needed.
Can I ask another question? Just from a parent standpoint, if you're looking at whether or not there are snow days, the two, like the bookends for the last days of school are both Mondays. I just don't know how that impacts. I don't have younger children anymore, but it just seems like.
Yep, so that we school days, and so it's a matter of how the numbers work out.
Okay.
I didn't select a Monday, because I agree, coming back on a Monday seems a little silly, but what we do is we take a look at the number of snow days. The first decision that we officially call for the end of school happens around graduation, because we have families traveling from all over the country, and they want to make sure that they're traveling on the right day. And then once we set that, then we publicly confirm the last school day for students. And, like I said, it's 178 days, The state requires 180 days or X number of hours. We far surpass the number of hours with our days and the length of our days, so we feel comfortable with 178, but we still have a little bit of for the superintendent to make an adjustment if we're looking at having students return on a Monday, but we take a look at every year, what the disruption has been like, and if we feel that that last day is instruction.
And so, out of curiosity, because a few years back, I think Ken and I were the only ones still on the board back then, we had a huge issue with, and a huge debate over holding school on voting days. And we made it a priority to not hold school on voting days, but we're choosing to not do that anymore.
So last year, we looked at the calendar, and it would be the same thing for this year. It sort of depends on where the holidays land and, President's Day and all that. But if you take a look at it, voting day is March 7th.
Yeah.
So the disruption of having a week off, coming back for Monday, having a day off, was deemed by the three boards that would be less productive. And many families might choose to just skip out on the Monday. And so we ended up shifting because originally I had it on that day, and then we shifted the professional day to the December. I think we do very well with voting on that March day in this building with students. With students present, we have enough support by our officers and by our adults in the building that we sort of hold traffic when there's traffic. Cafeteria. So I feel comfortable that we're doing it. Like I said, I think the biggest hiccup this year was right around 3 o'clock with buses and carpool and folks trying to come in to vote. We made it through just fine, but it might not be a bad idea to share with the public that this is our dismissal time for those that don't know. I have a greater concern with the November voting day because that tends to draw a larger crowd, and we also have voting at the high school. So that is a huge disruption for that building, and the students park there as well, and so there's no place for the voters to park. So the impact is greater on that November day than the March day.
And there's still no way that we can alter the entrance for voters to come into the school so that we're not pulling them through the hallways. 'Cause that was one of the bigger priorities for us was about student safety. Like, I'm less concerned about a traffic jam in here, like honestly, if the kids get home 10 minutes later because the buses and the cars are having like a disagreement about who goes where, as long as there's no accidents, I don't care. I'm more concerned about student safety. And that was the whole premise of the idea from the beginning. And I know and I don't know whether it was a dismissal of the idea that because of the playground, we couldn't use the back entrance, or I don't know if there's an alternative thought process on how, but it still just doesn't sit right with me. And I know that that March date is a smaller voting day. But I always like to, I'm risk averse. I am a risk averse person, so it's in my nature to be that human. But that's just me, so.
Just so I can speak.
Yeah.
I have to say, we did have a police officer in the lobby the entire time, and the staff was really cognizant and aware as far as if they had to bring their students up. The only time that the students came across was either to pick up snacks, so there'd be one or two students that would come together, and the police officer was there. And, again, staff was around. And then we had half of the classes coming into the cafeteria for lunch. The rest of the students, they did have to come up to get their lunches, and then they were brought down to their classrooms to eat. But they were, adults were here. So bringing them up to the cafeteria to get their lunch, bring them back to the classroom. So in that sense, they were always supervised with adults. And during that time frame, it was really earlier in the morning and later in the afternoon, actually around 2 or 3, most people were coming in to vote. So students were mainly in their classrooms.
Are the
or-
kids still like split between here and the gym for eating?
Right now, yes. Yep.
So it's a disruption to the lunch process for the kiddos too.
For this year.
Yeah, just for this year.
Is it expected to go back next year?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
But they did a great job with it, you know, and the cafeteria, they were made aware of what the changes would be. So all students had lunches that were in, you know, containers, so it was easy to handle and move.
I'm still hung up on the Wednesday, March day. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm still hung up on that. All the other ones fit in with the calendar schedule.
What
This
about a
one-
Monday in March?
This one just, it's in the middle of the week is tough. Other than that,
Oh, that's a good
that,
idea.
that's,
To kind
yeah.
of help Allison's concern, we're out
Right.
earlier.
I like that written, that
It would be-
solves both those
It would be
problems.
different if we had like the Lawrence Barn where everyone can vote, but,
Exactly.
We don't.
right.
Thank you.
An early release before lunch for the elementary schools?
No, it's after lunch. Our co-op schools as well, so that it constitutes a school day.
Yeah,
But if you don't get the lunch in the cafeteria, you can just have your lunch at home.
okay.
You can just grab and go.
Grab and go.
Okay, so now can you fix the other issue that I have with New Hampshire is like the double vacations in the middle of like winter?
Well, that's New England.
Okay. Right. No, I'm putting it out there, Gina.
Tried. I feel like it was tried a few years ago. Maybe that was Massachusetts.
Unpopular, it's okay.
We all set with that?
I think so.
Thanks for the,
Yeah.
listening to our feedback,
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
it,
you.
and for the overview. Okay, great, so we're at the Special Ed Trust Fund update now.
In your board packet, Kelly Seeley, the business administrator, had provided you with a memo. Most of the board realizes that since the beginning of the year, we've been projecting a budget concern because of special ed. Early in the year, we had projected that that may be as high as $200,000 over our projected budget because of move-ins between when we finished the budget and when we opened school last year. Kelly was kind enough to provide us with our current status. Our extended school year is running over by $39,305. Our contracted services, and this is typically students who come into the district and maybe are placed in a different educational setting to best meet their needs. $75,363. Transportation was $46,415, which started off the year at $361,083 in costs that we had not projected because the students were not with us when we did the budget. So right now, Kelly's recommending, and not for motion tonight, but more just so the board is aware, that we use $125,000 from the Special Ed Trust Fund. Her March expense balance is conservative, and all her estimates are always conservative. Unless the district experiences significant unexpected costs over the next 3 months, which we're not forecasting, we anticipate an ending balance of what we're projecting of a loss of $21,234 to significantly improve. The revenue estimate should remain relatively stable over the next 3 months. And lastly, the projected balance of $155,890, offset by the $120,000 from the Special Ed Trust Fund, would leave a balance of $30,890 if everything remains the same. The board should be aware that they can go as high for the retained fund balance as $140,161. That's what you can legally go up to. The number that we had this year was approved at 129. The procedure moving forward is we'll go through the next couple months. We'll come back, and during a board meeting, we'll have a public hearing. At that time, we'll kind of have more of what I'll call close to final numbers. And at that point, we'd ask the board we'd make a recommendation to the board for a number not to exceed a certain number. And as I go through, in a moment, I'll go through the expense and revenue, and I think it'll become clearer as well. So are there any questions on the kind of update on the special ed trust fund? Next is the facilities committee update. Later on tonight, I'm going to ask the board to go from a facility study committee to approve a facilities construction renovation committee. And what will happen then is basically that same group that has been doing the study will come together. And Kelly, Lance, Gina, and I are dividing the multiple projects across the SAU. And each one of us will spearhead one of the projects and be responsible for the meeting minutes. And the minutes come to this board, so that's how the community would know. Obviously, the committee is open to the public and people are welcome to attend. But based on contractor schedules, those meetings usually take place during the school day. With the passage of the $1.5 million bond, we had our first meeting with Mike regarding the project, and he will be ordering the elevator April 1st. The lead time on elevators is, well, say, unknown. We're not exactly sure. We're working hard on that, and we'll have more details. But our plan is that we will begin with the early summer, the removal of all the material out of what is the current library. New flooring, new partition wall will go in, and that will be constructed into the 2 classrooms, and those will be all set and ready to go long before the fall startup. On the ground floor during the summer, we'll start to work on the elevator shaft. We'll remove 1 set of the steps going into RMMS because we'll be putting in the new security office there. When you go through the double doors, if you went to the left, that will be becoming the home for the new library, and that will be taking place with construction. The biggest piece we will face is lead time and construction materials delivery, and that's everywhere. We're seeing, just to give you an example, we've been waiting on a rooftop unit in Hollis. Oh, it's got to be 6 months now. It's just the nature of what's going on. But we'll keep you updated. So later tonight, when we ask for that motion, that's just to formally change from a study committee to a building committee. And that empowers Kelly to then start to access the funds. Right now, she's already put the proposal out to the municipal lease company regarding rates and our approval, and all that paperwork is submitted through our bond council, and that will be moving forward. So some exciting times, and I think that the $1.5 million is going to get us immediately that classroom space. After that, we'll backfill, so we may start the year with a library on a cart and things of that nature, or setting up a small library in the gymnasium or something. Buy us the time as we transition from one to the other. Very excited, and we'll continue to have basically monthly updates at our board meetings. Also in your packet, again, not for this month, but wanted to make you aware, Kelly Seeley, again, is recommending a pre-tuition increase. The current tuition is $2,400 for the year, or $240 a month. The last rate increase was 2010. And our salaries and all the other components of that continue to rise. So Kelly is proposing an increase of $100 over the next 3 years. So 22-23 would go up to $2,500. 23-24 would go up to $2,600, and 24-25 would go up to $2,700. Then at place an annual 5-year review to check those costs. She did reach out to neighboring districts, and we higher than a couple, we're lower than a few others, and this is a service that we feel has a great benefit to the students And again, as we try to do for the new board members, we try not to bring something forward and ask you to vote on it the same night. It does two things. It allows the community to give you input, like me, and two, it gives you time to research and maybe reach out and ask questions of us. So you'll see that coming back in the April or May timeframe for an official deliberative motion to raise those rates.
Is this an appropriate time to ask a question about that, or?
Sure.
The rates, is this the same, is this the rates for students who qualified for special education or early intervention, or is this for the paired students?
This is the rate for the
Are scholarships available, or?
we have families in the past that we felt would be a benefit for them if they had applied. So money is not the only option. It's about
Okay.
getting I'll say a nice classroom components so that the students can learn from each other.
Okay.
Questions on that? Not, we will move over to deliberations now. Our first deliberation on the agenda is to see what action the board will take regarding the superintendent's recommendation regarding the nomination of teachers. So I'll put this motion on the floor and then we can discuss. So I'm going to make a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation for teacher nominations as presented.
Second.
Seconded, all right, by Karen. So that is on the floor for discussion now, if there is any. Not, we can put it to a vote then. So call to a vote. All those in favor? Okay, that carries 5-0. All right, our next one is to see what action the board will take regarding the administration's proposed school calendar for 2022-2023. I will make a motion to approve the 2022-2023 school year calendar as amended.
Second.
So the amendment is just looking at the March date into the voting day. And we had a second somewhere over here. Okay, Allison, thank you. Any other discussion on that? Okay, all in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you. All right, our next deliberation is to see what action the board will take regarding the administration's recommendation to change the charge of the Facilities Study Committee to a working group for construction renovation projects. So I'll make a motion to accept the administration's recommendation to change the charge of the Facilities Study Committee to a working group for construction renovation projects. Need a second, please?
Second.
Second by Karen. Any further discussion there? This will be one of the committees now that we were talking about reviewing. And to Andy's point, that's one, if anyone has availability in the day, that's a good one, if you have time in the day. All right, call to a vote. All those in favor? 5-0, very good, thank you. All right, and our last one is to see what action the board will take regarding the recommendation by legal counsel regarding the petition warrant for a special meeting. So I will make the motion to approve the citizens petition for a special meeting to cover an optional policy for masks and face coverings in the Brookline School District. So need a second to put that on the floor.
Motion, I apologize.
No, no problem. Making the motion to approve the citizens petition for a special meeting to cover an optional policy for masks and face coverings in the Brookline School District.
Second.
Okay, so that is on the floor now for discussion. Is there any discussion?
First of all, James O'Shaughnessy is our attorney. he believes that and they would have to be the one us moving to masks or to some other.
Questions or comments on that? Personally, I will be voting in favor of the legal counsel for the counsel we just received there. I think that was well summarized, so thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, so my, my question is about sort of the timeline in terms of what the state of emergency that the governor declared allowed us to do as a school district then versus the governor's press conference on February 23rd, where he said that his interpretation of ED Rule 306 is that we are not allowed, that school districts and school boards are not allowed to implement mask mandates any longer. So, is that correct?
Yes, what, in the training sessions around this, that's where DHHS comes in, health professionals now to provide, or if they recommended to go back to that. Numbers are down significantly across state. Our towns, our numbers are very.
And just to reiterate, so we've said this at every meeting, I just want to make sure, from the start of the pandemic through the rescinding of the masks in, what was it, February, we followed DHS guidance 100%. That's how we voted through the entire process. It was following that guidance, and we continue to follow that guidance. And so for that reason and the legal guidance, I think those are two important pieces.
Since our legal counsel advises that this is not an appropriate use of a public meeting with voting on this issue, is there any other recourse for citizens, the legislative body of Brookline, to, provide feedback and have their voices be heard if this matter were to come in front of the district again?
If the district were to encounter a spike and be recommending, we would have the same forums that we had previous, which would be the public input during our regular meetings, where people were very active in showing up to. And I think the other piece is we know so much more now than we did before, that I think it's easier to obtain guidance from DHHS because their understanding around the pandemic is so much clearer.
Yeah.
So as we always do, just so the board knows, that the motion is done to the affirmative. So if the legal counsel is actually opposing that, so if you wanted to support legal counsel, you would vote against the motion. But we always write the motion in the affirmative.
Thanks for your question. Anything else, Kelly? No, I'm just want to make sure we cover the topic.
No, I just feel like it's a difficult discussion because I do want to always err on the side of listening to the legislative body and involving them in the process. And so to understand that it would be an expense to the district of holding hearings and printing ballots and having a meeting such as our SB2 meeting on March 8th. It would be a similar type of meeting with a ballot that would be necessitated if we approved this motion.
And
for-
police force to support it as well, yep.
Okay. So I just want to understand that, and I want to say that I'm in support of voters coming forward to request this type of, hearing or meeting if it's appropriate, but if our legal counsel is saying it's not appropriate, and the governor has said that it's not something we can do anyway, then that clears it up for me. Thank you.
Sure, yep, and those are important points. And the only other thing that, just to reiterate, is the school boards are required to have policies of health and safety measures, which is why we deferred to DHS in the case of this previously. Any other questions or comments? Okay, ready for a vote? Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, so that's 0 to 5. All right. We are now moving to our policies. So our first is BCA. Policy BCA states in part, the school board will review and vote to adhere to the following board member code of ethics as at the board organizational meeting each year. That's RSA 91A2. So I'm going to make a motion then that the board, by roll call vote for this one, state agreement to adhere to policy BCA, board member code of ethics.
Second.
Second by Karen, thank you. Any discussion on this? Okay, very good. Kelly, we'll start with you for the roll call vote, please.
Aye.
Colleen, aye.
Karen, I.
Allison, I.
And Ken, I. So that carries 5-0. We talked at the start about DFA investment. We're going to defer till next month, so we'll skip over that. Oh, skip over that. So we are at adjournment. So I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All those in favor? 5-0. So we are adjourned officially at 7:59. Thank you.